delegates, we're moving on to the next section in business. We are going to start with something that isn't on the agenda. Apologies for that. However, I'm going to ask the General Secretary to take the stage to explain what's going to happen next.
You'll like this. You'll like this. So, there was a prize omitted last night in the prize draw. Not just any prize, but a £150 monetary voucher for Crieff Hydro. So, this is what I'm here to do now. But of course, we could just go back to the agenda if you prefer. Okay, and Mr. Glennie tells me I'm not to try and predict who it is. No. Mr. Ewan Duncan.
Facts.
No, I can't answer that right now.
Facts.
On a custom
I know.
as I am.
Elaine's said the same thing.
What's the chances of getting two winning raffle tickets?
Yeah.
There's maybe a model. There's maybe a model. If you hand back your first prize, you might get a better one. Hopefully by the end of Congress, we'll be able to announce the total that we've raised. But thank you very much again.
Thank you. That was a nice surprise to set off the day, wasn't it? So, we're actually going to go back to motions. Now, if you recall the other day, I said we were going to go back to motion I, because that was going to be the first motion of the session. So if you could find motion I right now. Kirsten's going to join us to present this motion, but she's joining us online. And I can see Kirsten's with us. So, Kirsten, go on when you're ready.
Good morning, Congress. It's a pleasure to join you, thanks to the modern technology, and thanks must go to everyone who makes that possible. Schools in 21st century Scotland present teachers with a particularly large number of challenges, some of which are incredibly difficult. According to a research project conducted by Bath Spa University, Scottish teachers identified some of their greatest challenges as follows: extremely poor working conditions, high levels of demand, poor control over their duties and remits, organisational changes without consultation, an average of 11 hours per week unpaid overtime in addition to their contracted working hours. Is it surprising that over 40% of teachers who took part in this research intimated they were planning on leaving the profession in the next 18 months? They have disengaged with a job they used to love. More and more teachers suffer from mental health issues. Many factors are responsible for this. Unmotivated students with behavioural problems, overwhelmed, unreasonable parents, and even social media create stress and depression. The problem has been known for years and has been proven by numerous studies whereby the number of teachers affected with mental disorders up to and including burnout is constantly increasing. Scottish teachers experience frontline guidance and through this can be approached with traumatic disclosures. There is currently no support system in place to help teachers work through their guidance load. Therefore, teachers retain trauma, which very often does not go further than school due to lack of avenues above and beyond. Every counsellor in Scotland receives supervision, which is a legal requirement to ensure they are not carrying a disclosed trauma back and forth, but teachers and pastoral care staff do not have this measure in place. Hence, if triggered by a disclosure made to them, they might relive past experiences which could influence their teaching in class and their relationships in school. School plays a comparatively small role in education and understanding of social norms. Teachers deal with different family-based values of their students daily, yet have the task to support the school ethos in line with existing norms in our society. However, they're given fewer and fewer tools to support pupils and achieve positive behaviour outcomes. It is not surprising, and it is no secret, that teachers experience verbal and physical abuse. Very often, schools do not have the resources, human and others, to deal with challenging behaviour towards staff and amongst pupils. Last year's OECD report clearly stated that Scotland's teachers are the most class committed, with the most contact time in all OECD countries. In the light of the government's GERFIC agenda, which is a great aspiration, it appears to be necessary to increase teachers' numbers to employ more support staff, to bring more mental health experts into schools, for pupils and for teachers. But it is also necessary to plan for and develop an alternative route of progression for disengaged secondary pupils at the age of 14 or 15 whose behaviour communicates clearly that they wish to be away from the structure of school. Such an alternative would change the lives of these pupils and our staff in schools for the better. Scottish schools are comprehensive schools, places of social cohesion, with more and more neurodiversity in the classroom, and only one teacher in the middle of up to 32 pupils to deal with it all. Therefore, teachers have no choice but to add specialist training to their already heavy workload to try and support each pupil as best they can. Differentiation and behaviour support are left to the classroom practitioner in the absence of classroom and pupil support assistants whose numbers have been cut over time and very often make early intervention impossible. To rectify these cuts, schools should receive funding directly and should have the autonomy to decide how best to use it. Without a doubt, the current staffing levels in Scottish schools do not suffice. The recruitment crisis in secondary schools in some parts of the country is a serious concern. Teachers continue to leave the profession in staggering numbers because of student behaviour and lack of support. With a university degree and many soft skills developed to perfection over time, more and more of them see a better future away from the classroom. Therefore, an urgent review of behaviour support and management in schools should be carried out to identify and fund additional resources which aim to ensure that teachers and pupils are fully supported. Thank you.
Do we have a seconder for that motion? Thank you very much, Delegate, for coming to the table.
Lynn Miles, Delegate 52. Apologies if my voice goes halfway through. There was too much singing along to ABBA last night. COVID has impacted on the behaviour of pupils. Behaviour was an issue in schools before COVID, but it has had a significant impact on behaviour and on mental health on staff and pupils alike. Kirsten referred to the amount of teachers intending to leave. I have to be honest, I'm one of them. We're told that all behaviour is communication, that it's not bad behaviour, it's distressed behaviour. And quite a few of our pupils are distressed, but increasingly quite a lot of our staff are distressed with what they're having to put up with. The systems that we have at the moment in Edinburgh Council, where I am, it's called the She Portal for logging violent incidents. In East Lothian and Mid Lothian, I believe it's called Sphera. It will probably be called lots of different things and right across the country. But essentially, the systems that are in place, they work for most of the pupils, but they don't work for all of the pupils. And it's the high tariff pupils that are causing the most distress and the most problems in school for staff and pupils alike. Pupils in classes where children are behaving badly can't fail to be affected. There is a gentleman doing the rounds of schools. His name is Paul Dix. You may or may not have heard of him. Our school got Mr Dixon to talk to us and gave us all a copy of his book, which was imaginatively entitled, When the Adult Changes, Everything Changes. I'll let you think about the implication of that. The subheading of his book is Seismic Shifts in School Behaviour. There are seismic shifts in school behaviour. Staff are leaving. We can't get new staff. And one of the big reasons for this is we're not addressing behaviour properly in schools. I would like to second the motion and would ask you to support the motion. Thank you.
I don't see anyone rising to speak to the motion, so thank you to both speakers for putting their points so well. Oh, there's Kevin coming down a little bit. I know, we were just discussing that actually. We were thinking in the meantime, until any chairs come to the front in the next session, you can maybe come down and just sit at these desks at the front. Thanks, Kevin.
Oh, congratulations, I've won a bottle of 12-year-old Bushmill malt whisky according to Kevin Campbell, Delegate 21. I mean, anybody that knows me will have heard me rant endlessly about this going back years. But I mean, in my humble opinion, we're creating a crisis in our country, because when we talk about behaviour, and the last speaker summed it up very well in terms of this. I mean, this is so multifaceted, and there's so, I mean, I could literally talk about this all day. But I mean, for me, there has been a narrative gone back years around about behaviour in our schools. And this narrative, I think, is caused by, and it might not go down well, but this narrative, I think, is caused by middle-class do-gooders who actually have no idea of what it's like to suffer the very many traumas that they tell us that these kids suffer. I mean, whilst I accept the argument about behaviour becoming worse since COVID, I mean, are we really supposed to expect or believe that a kid who got a few months off school has been traumatised by that? Because if I had got a few months off school when I was a teenager, it would have been magnificent. I mean, admittedly, when I was a teenager, there were football pitches everywhere and you could play football, you could do this, you could do that, you could go around smashing windies and the council would fix them, whatever. But I mean, I find it hard to believe that a kid is traumatised by getting a couple of months off school. I really do. And like I said, I think this narrative has been set in motion long before COVID. And we all know what I'm talking about. The whole narrative about, like the last speaker talked about, that, oh, you just need more training. You need more training in how to deal with this. It's because of the way you're behaving that causes the kid to behave in a certain way. That is utter and absolute claptrap. It really is, and I think we need to resist that narrative at every level. And I mean, I remember a few years ago when I was president trying to speak to John Swinney about this issue. Didn't want to know. Shut it down. Every time you try to raise it, shut down, shut down, shut down. I mean, at Sagrabis, I think the last time they issued a report on behaviour in Scottish schools was years ago. And I believe that that report, in summary, was there's no problems in Scottish schools other than some low-level disruption. Well, I'm sorry, that is fantasy stuff, because it's a lot more than low-level disruption. And we also have the hamstringing SLTs in our schools when it comes to dealing with behaviour, because there is literally nothing that anybody can do to address the problem. Because there is, I mean, other than the comprehensive secondary school, well, in Fife, for instance, we have a pupil support service. Well, you need to be literally a psychopath to get into that pupil support service, and everybody else is in the school, whereas we know ASN departments, behaviour departments, these sorts of things can't cope. There's so many kids who fall into these various brackets, so they're in classes, the teacher has no support. I mean, I literally could go on about this all day, so all I want today is say support this motion, because we seriously need some sort of action taken in this. Otherwise, we are creating a time bomb for our society. Young people growing up with zero resilience, can't be told to do anything. God help them when they go to get a job.
Mark Davenlin, Delegate 22. I've been teaching for 11 years, feels like 50. I've never known behaviour to be as difficult as it is now. And I imagine people have been doing this for much longer than me, maybe have been through this before and it goes up and down. But for me, the past year especially has been awful. This is mentioned to me by colleagues more than pay. Because it's something that impacts them every single day of their job, and it makes it extremely difficult. There were people that were happy to work from home as teachers because they realised how easy teaching could be if you just had people that listened and did all your work. All you had to do was mark it. But it's already been mentioned a few times where councils and government tried to start to shift the blame on what the problem is. COVID. Yes, that's now something we can use as a reason why pupils are misbehaving or why it's so difficult to control them. But what started to happen is whenever you have people that behave poorly in your class, your learning and teaching isn't good enough. They're just not engaged in your work. You don't know how to control your class. You could do it for 9 years, but in the past year, something's happened to you and you just can't do it anymore. No accountability from anybody. I fully agree with Kevin that SLT are hamstrung, but they could be a lot more understanding. And I imagine that varies by school. There's no support staff, or if there is, they're like gold dust. Because whenever you have a class of 30 pupils and 20 of them have an additional support need, and you can't even get one, it gives you an idea of where things are going. It's a really demoralising time for education, I feel. I can't convince anybody to go into teaching right now, which is really sad at a time when we need more teachers than ever for this 90 minutes a week. I don't know where they're going to get them from. Things need to change, so I urge you to support the motion.
When the adult changes, everything changes. Yeah. Which means that now what happens is when there is a serious incident, the first person who will be interviewed is a pupil. And I have recently been in a case whereby there was some outrageous behaviour and abuse from a pupil. And the pupil was still in school the next day. And the teacher contacted me because he's an SSTA member. And I went to speak to the deputy who quickly showed me, there's the interview. We've interviewed so-and-so, the child, basically. And I said, have you actually either asked the teacher's version of the story, or have you actually asked the teacher, are you all right? Do you need time out? No, they didn't. And then they turned around and said, but I phoned so-and-so's mum. I should have known that. Well, you could have asked. And I have to say, not all SLT are like that, but the problem with ours is that they are so harassed. They're not proactive, they're reactive all the time. It's like they're running after a small group of children who create mayhem, not only in the school, but in the community. And yes, the problem is not, it is the policies included, engaged, and involved. It has to be twigged to change it so that we don't create a generation of kids who are unemployable. So I urge you to vote for this motion. I'm totally for it.
James Cowens, Delegate 60. As part of now our discussions in the Education Committee, this issue has come up on a number of occasions now over the year, hence the motion. One of the things I think, some of you might still remember this, there was such a role as PT behaviour support. Right? That, I don't know whether there's now another agenda out there, right? But the role of this has been squeezed or removed with the onus put on individual teachers. Monique, now that story is probably now more happening than not, right? Where everybody gets interviewed first and the kind of teachers interviewed last. Where's the well-being in that? To the point that the teacher's not trusted, right? Is there a financial aspect to this? Because they can go and spend the money elsewhere? Or is it a society thing where we're saying, well, wait a minute, the behaviours in our schools, that's not it. There's a denial there, folks, right? So please support the motion. Thank you.
Gordon West, 12 Aberdeenshire. There's so many things I feel I could say. I'll just try and rattle through as many as I can quickly to try and pick up some of the points that are being made. There are things that can be done. It's making sure they are done is the issue. So, for example, people do get excluded, but sometimes it's valid when they come back to go on a part-time timetable. In CMIS, there is a part-time timetable code following exclusion, so that's an option. But if you want to keep on part-time timetables and you think it's justified, you have to have a multi-agency process. Now, the multi-agency process will need a health input or educational psychologist or something. Try and get social work involvement if there's no offending in the community, which means you sometimes have to involve the police so that there are charges, so that there's offending in the community. There's a lot of things that can be done, but it all takes time. I have to throw that in. In terms of behaviour, can I point out the comment about surveys? Obviously, the pandemic stopped the annual surveys that are done, organised through Sagrabis. The next one is due in spring. There are additional questions going to be in that, and I've already given a comment about some additional things I think they should be reviewing when they're putting this out for tender. So we are going to be trying to follow that up. That relies on staff in schools to be honest and say it as it is. That's very important. Other things I was going to say, I think we've got a problem beyond what was mentioned by the speaker. I don't disagree with what was said, but we've got a significant problem of pupils. The day they come into secondary school, we know they cannot cope because they've already shown in primary. We've got pupils coming up from P7 who have not been in mainstream education other than they turn up till at 10:30, they have toast, tea, play games and go home at 12, and that's their daily education. And then they come to the academy. We are then expected to try and put together alternative pathways, some other provision. Okay. The work involved in us trying to find out someone who can, will, etc., take pupils to do something alternative, bearing in mind that many of these pupils cannot work with other pupils, and you get more than 2 or 3 together, it doesn't work. It's a nightmare. It's practice different all over Scotland. I would like to see from centre perhaps, there needs to be a coordinated way to provide information and pathways. Maybe all the authorities need to be the ones who are organising these alternatives rather than leaving it on the schools to have to do. There's a lot could be said on that. Another comment I want to make, if you may, indulge me. I think we've got to be very careful and make a distinction between behaviour that is violent and behaviour that is just really, really disruptive. Now, there's an extent to which pupils can be made to behave, and some teachers are better than others at creating atmospheres, getting attention, whatever it is, and there are some pupils, whoever you're dealing with, you'll get nowhere. And very often the ones who are in the second category are also violent, likely to explode, well, just violent sums it up. I've got 4 seconds, I'll be very quick. Please make sure that we get that distinction clear. There are violent incident form processes. We can create behaviour risk assessments. You can justify making adjustments, whether family like it or not. Bottom line is, if it's a health and safety matter and it's to do with the safety of pupils and others and staff, you can do things using behaviour risk assessments. That's important. I'll make one last point. GERFIC. Nobody's mentioned GERFIC. Where is it getting it right for every child to have people's education absolutely ruined by the pupil they're sitting beside? Thank you.
Hello, I'm Sandra Mills, delegate number 29 from Highland. 3 years ago in Highland, they cut their ASN provision by about 30%. There was massive cuts. That was promptly followed the following year by a Highland-wide training on behaviour management, which was really, they labelled as understanding pupil behaviour, as in the all behaviour is communication sort of thread, whereas I would label it as just try and be really nice to the Waynes. That training was so offensive that several staff members walked out of it. We had a training just last week in our school, the first part of which suggested that we had too many rules and not enough academic challenge for our pupils, and that was creating the anxiety. And the guidance teacher actually said, then we get them at our door. Make of that what you will. The next stage of the training was all about the language we're using in the classroom. It suggested that perhaps if we were more willing to couch it in terms of that when you misbehave, this makes me feel a particular way, then the children would not. And the highlight of that section was one of our extended leadership team telling us that quite often when there is a conflict in the classroom, the pupil has a very different story from the teacher. The suggestion was that if we used the correct language, then the pupil would not come out with a different story. The pupil would understand the reality of what had happened, which I think just totally ignores teenager behaviour. It just ignores the fact that they're teenagers. The third part of the training was a depute talking at us for 40 minutes, telling us to be nicer to the Waynes. And now, this is a school where we had a teacher who'd won the Teacher of the Year award a couple of years ago, who just quit halfway through the year. No provision in place. He just handed in his notice and walked out. I just think this is a really disturbing trend, and I would absolutely urge you to support this motion.
Some really, really interesting comments, and before my Minutes Secretary gets annoyed with me, Stuart Hunter, delegate number 2. I just wanted to comment on this, and I think being older, I can get away with being a wee bit more cantankerous. Do children learn in the classroom? Of course they do. Because the reality is that children have learned behaviour. That learned behaviour comes from the adults that they deal with and how they respond and how they are responded to. When you have behaviour issues, you could argue that the child is actually having to deal with certain issues and could be crying out for help, whatever it might be. But there is one significant element of the learned behaviour that is not being dealt with. Accepting the responsibility for the consequences of their actions. That is not happening. When you have a system that blames teachers, by all means scrutinise what's happened, scrutinise it, have a look at it, where can we learn from that experience? But the bottom line is, if we have a system that actually teaches our children that there are no consequences to their behaviour, then we can expect that behaviour to deteriorate, because that's what they are learning. We need to tackle this. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone who spoke to that. It's got us really fired up. It's fantastic. Before I move to the vote, I'm actually going to give you some information. I would like to ask your permission to crack on with this rather than stopping for another break and just see if we can get our business done before lunch, because lunch has been ordered and the caterers are waiting. to serve us all our delicious lunch. Do I have approval for that? Thank you very much, delegates. And on that note, we're going to move to the vote. So, I think this is going to be an unsurprising. So, can we have all hands for those in favour? Thank you. Can we have all hands for those against? Can we have any abstentions? Online votes? Maybe, Past President?
Unsurprisingly, it's 100% in favour.
Fantastic. That is unanimous, or I believe NEMCON? No?
No.
NEMCON unanimous is no, we've got nobody saying that there's any abstentions then, so that's fine. Right. We were getting told off the other day for not using NEMCON, you see, so I thought I'd better check. Right, it's unanimous. So, back to the agenda. Now, if you have a wee leaf through your Congress booklet, we are going to be going to 15, and that's the Equalities Committee report. And Maggie she can't be with us, unfortunately, today, so she was going to join us online. There we go. I can see Maggie.
Good morning, Congress. Again, sorry I can't be here. Maggie Nesbitt, delegate number 49. Okay, the Equalities panel report is on page 30 of your booklets. I just want to add to what we said today, the advice note that we've been working on is still with the lawyers, and the fact that it's taken them several months would say exactly how difficult this has been to deal with. It will be available once we hear back from them. And I'd also like to say that we have a number of vacancies on our Equalities panel due to retirements, so if anybody is interested, if you could pass your name on to one of the office staff, that would be brilliant. Thank you. That's all on the report.
Maggie,
Sorry, I can't hear you.
I'm just going to ask if there's any questions for Maggie. There doesn't appear to be. So, can we move to approval of the report? Thank you very much, delegates. So, Maggie, your report's been approved, so we can move on to motion K. And I'm going to ask Maggie to present motion K she's proposing.
Thank you very much, President. A person's sex remains one of the main drivers of inequality in the nation. The public sector equality duty requires public bodies to have due regard to the need to eliminate discrimination, advance equality of opportunity, and foster good relations between different people when carrying out their activities. Collecting good quality equality information gives public authorities an understanding of the impact of their policies and practices on people who share particular protected characteristics. Recently, there have been occasions when data gathering on the protected characteristic of sex has been conflated with the ideology of gender identities. One local authority, in gathering personal data from their employees, asked for gender and included the option to self-describe. There is concern that because of the conflation of sex and gender identity, an innate feeling of who you are, which may or may not be in line with your biological sex, the data we are gathering is in danger of becoming compromised with particular regard to women under the protected characteristic of sex. Data compromised by conflating sex with gender identity in this way has the potential to affect planning for improvement on women's issues. Data on such important issues as the gender pay gap may be skewed, giving a less accurate picture. Professor Anne Sullivan of University College London explains it in this way. Sex and gender identity are entirely distinct concepts. Surveys need to avoid conflating them. Without accurate data on sex, we lose the ability to understand differences and to design evidence-based policies tackling problems facing girls and boys, women and men. We also lose the ability to gain an accurate understanding of issues facing trans-identifying people of both sexes. The Equality and Human Rights Commission, in a letter to the Cabinet Secretary Shona Robinson, highlighted the potential consequences of allowing a person to self-identify their sex, which included consequences relating to the collection and use of data. They further say that it would be difficult, if not impossible, to meet the public sector equality duty or undertake adequate equality impact assessments without knowing who uses their services, and that the collection of data must be appropriate and proportionate to the particular purpose for and that the collection of data must be appropriate and proportionate to the particular purpose for which the data is being collected. At times, people's right to privacy will take precedence. At others, such as when a public body is fulfilling its statutory responsibilities, it is justified to ask such questions. At a webinar last June on the public sector equality duty and data protection, in which one of our members was attendance, the question was asked: how can organisations ensure data on the protected characteristic of sex is collected without being conflated or confused with gender identity? Laura Hutchison, Principal Compliance from EHRC, answered unequivocally: ask a sex question with a male, female, prefer not to say answer, and a separate trans question. It is not rude nor unkind to ask one for biological or legal sex in a survey with privacy protections in order and a prefer not to say option. It is, however, a fact that data on women will be obscured by including gender identity in a sex question, especially when gathering data on matters which predominantly affect women like sexual harassment and pay gaps. Data gathering on gender identity can also be collected, but not in conflation with the important sex variable. If there is a gender identity pay gap, then it would be good to find that out too. Courts have made clear that a biological definition of sex must be used where matters of status of rights are an issue, so should not be used in just Equality Act cases, but in any case where any important rights are being decided and the definition of sex is in use. A report from the UN Women regarding the adverse effect on women resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic undertook gender assessment surveys with national and United Nations partners on the impacts of COVID-19 in countries across the world. The results confirmed that COVID-19 pandemic was exacerbating pre-existing gender inequalities and deepening gender-based discrimination and vulnerability, setting back years' worth of equality gains. There will be much work to support women in the years ahead. If we lose sight of the importance of gathering accurate data on sex, we will be unable to continue to work towards the equitable society that we all desire. I urge you to support the motion. Thank you.
I'm going to ask for a seconder for that, as thank you very much. As there are no further speakers, we can move straight to the vote. So, delegates in favour? Thank you.
One job you have to do, you can't.
Against? Thank you. And abstentions? Can't see any. One, sorry. Oh, thank you very much. Two. Thank you, Eagle Eyes. Glennie, thank you. Now, online.
Online, I'm afraid there's a technical issue again. I can't see anybody online.
All four. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, now that one, is definitely an MCon because we had a couple of abstentions. So thank you very much, delegates. We can say that that is carried, NEMCON. We're going to move on to item 16 on the agenda now, and that is the report of the Health and Safety Wellbeing Committee. And I'm going to ask Grant McAllister to come to the lectern to present that report. Thank you, Grant.
Grant McAllister, delegate number 24. Good morning, Congress, unless you're from Inverness, and then I hope you're stuck behind the cement mixer all the way up the A9. The report is on page 31 of the conference booklet. A couple of things to highlight from that. First of all, could our Aberdeenshire delegates please thank Barbara Adams for all her work on this committee over the years. She's retiring this year and she'll be a huge loss to us and what we've done. So, genuine thank you. Thank you also to Ian Glennie for keeping us right, and for Laura for reminding me to put in the reports. I really appreciate that as well. There is one thing. We're going to have the writing of our new health and safety advice for the website. That's going to be done in the next couple of weeks and be finished by the summer. We also are going to have a health and safety reps training day. It's the first Friday in September, Ian. Is that right? I got it wrong when I put in the times for my work. So.
Thank you very much. Has anybody got any questions for Grant? This time I can't see anybody raising their hands at all, and Eagle-Eye Glennie hasn't said there's any. So I think we're okay. Can I have approval for the report, please? So the Health and Safety and Wellbeing Committee's report has been approved by Congress. Thank you. Now, could you stay on your feet, please? Would that be okay? Because Grant is going to be on his feet for some time, I'm afraid. So we might need to refresh him halfway through this. But Grant is going to present motion L for us.
I have suffered a recent trauma and I'm showing distressed behaviours, and as adults in the room I need you all to change for me. The wording has changed from in the motion back to the original wording that we put in. The wording in the motion talked about asking for the metalworking skills and such like to be part of the IT. It already is, we just need a greater emphasis on it. I've asked several party leaders in Scotland about the 90 minutes and about the practicalities of how are you going to do it? Where are you going to get the teachers from? Particularly in subject areas such as the sciences, home economics, as we talked about yesterday, and technical. Shirley Ann Somerville is still to reply. That's 12 months later. Willie Rennie did reply. He said, imagine what it would be like if we're independent. Liz Smith said you're all lazy, part-time. No, she didn't say that. She didn't say it. Yeah. She also chose not to reply. Ross Gear said something nice, that will be lovely, and it will be really nice, and we'll make it happen, but not actually any practicalities to it at all. And that's where we are with those. We have a real issue with the training of subject specialists and shortages there. Teacher training colleges do have targets, and they have targets for each subject. They have targets for physics, they have targets for technical, they have targets for home economics. But they get their funding on the gross total, if they meet the overall number of students. And so data over the last few years of where they are, their targets, both in Scotland and in England, show that they're hugely oversubscribed in certain areas. Primary. Subject areas where you might get a degree and might not get the attractive salary that a teaching is, comparatively. Maths, STEM subjects, home economics, technical subjects, their recruitment rate has been below 50% of their target for a number of years. We are absolutely desperate for these subject areas. My school yesterday, we managed to recruit 2 technical teachers. I really fell off my seat Friday afternoon. Literally, boss ringing with sheer joy. What did we do? We nabbed one from the school 100 yards along the road, and we nabbed one from another authority. They're not new into the system, we just stole them. We made things attractive. They told them we'd be getting all the subjects they wanted, and that's what we did. Folk are nabbing and pockling teachers from school to school just to try and fit their needs. It's not right, it's not okay. So we do need the colleges to work on this. The second part of this is, I'm not a skilled woodworker. We have a number of people coming out from the teacher training colleges who have not done woodwork, metalwork, used a lathe, used any of these things. They come out with a product design background. Okay? One of my technical teachers, she's an architect by training. She doesn't know how to use things. To pass technical teacher training, and currently, you have to be able to pass the NAT 5 project for woodwork. Last year, we had a student teacher who taught me how to make the mirror. So my daughter got a lovely Christmas present. Our dad made her a mirror. She'll keep it forever. Won't hold together forever, but we'll keep it forever. We had to teach her how to saw. We had to teach her how to chisel. We had to show her how to use a screw so that you didn't split the wood when you put the screwdriver into it. We had real troubles, and that's the level of it. She is qualified to teach metalwork. She has never used a pair of tin snips in her life. It is downright dangerous. The machines in those workshops will take your hand off, quite literally. Okay? There's a lovely term that we use in health and safety training of degloving. That happens on a lathe. That happens on a lathe when you don't know how to set it up properly. We need to have these people have more and more time in their teacher training colleges learning how to do these things. They are coming out unqualified to use the equipment in their rooms. And there are qualifications for the equipment in their rooms, and they need to be able to do it. Ladies and gentlemen, please, can you support this motion?
Thanks very much, Grant. I want to confirm to everybody that, Grant, that is the same wording that is in the booklet, so I think everybody can see.
No, there's the line about greater emphasis in the last line.
Vice President.
It talks about being integral in the last line in the booklet. It's actually a greater emphasis. Is the change?
The word on the screen is correct.
The wording on the screen is correct. Yeah. Wait a minute, we need to get that sorted. The screen is the correct wording. That is the motion that we are voting on, just to make sure everyone's clear when it comes to that. We do need a seconder. Lucy, thank you very much. Are you doing this formally? Thank you very much. So Lucy Davison, Delegate 22, is seconding this formally. Thank you, Delegate. I saw your hand. That was very good of you. Thank you so much. I'll watch for you again. So, can we move to the vote? Online, I think, is ready. Hands for? Thank you. Hands against? Any abstentions? Online voting?
100% in favour.
Fantastic. That is unanimous. Thank you so much, delegates. And we are now going to go to, wait a minute, we're going to go to motion M. Grant, take it away.
Okay, thanks very much. Folks, you will have been aware that last week was Mental Health Awareness Week in Scotland. You may well have had some interesting things come out from your local authority. This last week, I've been advised to have a 10-minute me time. I've also been told to go for a mindful walk. My chief executive asked me to do that. I wondered whether I could do that during bottom set third year. I wondered whether that would be okay. And I get on well. My head teacher, he's a good guy, but he said no. I can't leave them alone. Seemed a bit harsh. I do believe that local authorities are trying to do stuff for our mental well-being. I do believe that schools are trying. As a acting up member of SLT, I do try to look after my staff's mental health, and I do try to look after their welfare. It is important to me. But the systems are not fit for purpose. What we've got doesn't work. It's a council-driven, office-led. It would be the same if you were a road worker or a binman. You do not get to have a mindful walk as a binman, okay? It just doesn't happen, okay? I don't think many guys who are joiners for the council get to have a me 10 minutes, okay? What we need is better, proactive mental health services for each sector of this, okay? Much of what we get is a telephone service. Phone up some agency. If you want to speak to someone, well, the gatekeeper is perhaps the person that is causing the trauma, do you? Or you can go down a paid-for-it route, okay? You can go private on your care. This isn't acceptable. We need Scottish Government, we need local authorities to come up with proactive, genuinely meaningful mental health services for our staff, for our colleagues and for our members. Please, can you support the motion?
Can I have a seconder for that? Thank you very much, Lucy. Can we move to the vote? Can I see hands for? Thank you. Can I see hands against? Thank you. Can I see abstentions? Can we go to the... Did you vote?
It's 100% in favour.
Thank you very much, delegates. That is unanimous. And Grant, I think this is the last time you've got to come up and present, or not leave the stage to present. You've done a sterling job. Well done.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, on this next motion, I'd like to take you back to my last student placement, 1991. Round about this time of year, Colour Me Bad was going to sex you up. The only time we'd use collaborate was stop beforehand and listen afterwards. And it was a gorgeous, sunny afternoon in the east coast, northeast coast of Scotland. I was in a fairly new school for my final placement. It had a triple open plan science lab, all glass fronted. It was fantastic. Resource-based learning kicking off all over the place. It was a wonderful time. And as a student, I looked across and I gazed and I saw the beautiful bubble perm that Chloe had in the class next to me. She wasn't mine, fortunately. Way to light a Bunsen burner. She couldn't see whether the flame was on because it was a lovely sunny day, and as the physicists around here will know, on a sunny day, the blue flame becomes invisible. Okay? So Chloe went like this over the Bunsen burner. That was a trauma experience that I learnt from. I very rarely have used Bunsen burners in the next 31 years. Truly, truly terrified by them. Okay? But I got lots of practical during my student years and during my probationary years. Many years later, when I started working for CERC, I got asked to go and do my NEBOSH General Certificate. Ian and I both got it. It's quite an important means. I'm a member of the Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, which is an international body. One of the cases they talk about, not quite degloving, this was, you can picture the scene, it was a second-year class down the Borders High School. A girl was wearing the suitable long tartan scarf that was the fashion at that time, with a lathe. She got drawn into the lathe. Naturally, the teacher got drawn up for competence, for allowing this to happen. Where was your risk assessment? The local authority lost because the teacher hadn't been given enough instruction on practical activities, hadn't known how to risk assess, whether looking at it or anything like that. We have a similar situation potentially happening with our new members of staff in our practical subjects, where they have gone through training during COVID, where practical activities were banned. I know of a school where they were only allowed to use one colouring pencil until November of this year, of this session. That was the level of practical. We have a number of teachers coming out from colleges, from going through the probation, that have not had the experience, haven't learned how to do practical. They haven't done it because they haven't been allowed into their universities, they haven't done it because they haven't been allowed into their schools, they haven't done it because things have been so limited in what we do there. What this motion asks for is that further practical instruction becomes part of an NQT's training on these practical subjects, that they don't necessarily have to listen to the Paul Dix lecture, that they actually get to learn things that will help keep them and their children safe. That's what this motion is about, and colleagues, I would ask you to support it, and I feel like I'm back in the Cubs because Lucy's my seconder again.
Thank you very much, Lucy Davidson. Still number 27. Thank you for that. Can we move to a vote? And can I see hands for? Thank you. Can I see hands against? Thank you. Any abstentions? Thank you. Did you vote, time?
We haven't got any votes. They haven't come through.
Oh. We shall just wait with bated breath.
Catherine, it's not like it's very different. There's not enough people online to overrun those in the room, so you could happily say largely carried.
Largely carried.
What we're going to do at this point is tell you that we're going to take this as largely carried because of the weight of numbers in this room. Just in case there was somebody who was wanting to vote against, we'll take that into consideration. There's not enough voting elsewhere out with the room of our delegates outside to be able to take this vote into another region, so we're going to say largely carried on this one. Is that agreeable?
Oh.
Thank you.
Sorry, we've got an update. The votes have come through.
Are we update? Has it changed?
Yeah, it's 100% in favour.
Let's change that to unanimous. Thank you, delegates. And thank you, Grant, for presenting 3 on the back. You did an amazing job there, so thank you so much for that. The next one, 17, there is no report for that, so we're going to skip that. District motions, there were absolutely none, so we can finish with that. The report of the representatives on outside bodies, the Vice President is going to stand to present that report. Stuart.
Thank you. Stuart Hunter, delegate number 2. The report is on page 32. It's there as read. All I really want to add is, if you look at the last sentence in the report, it says the SSTA would encourage all teachers of RME to sign up to STARM. I'm going to explain that in a moment, as a means of having a tailored support for all teachers of RME, and that contact details will follow. Yesterday, you had these on the table. These are the contact details for STARM. STARM being the Scottish Teachers Association of Religious and Moral Education. I would strongly urge you to pick up some more of these flyers. At the back, I'm just trying to see, on the back table where the professional officers are and the administrative staff, you will see the pile of these. Please help yourself to these. Take them back to your schools. Get the message out there, because this is really important for all of our teachers who teach. the subject of RME, RMPS, philosophy, etc., etc. So I will leave it there. Sorry, one other point I wanted to make. In the contact details, the Twitter account actually has a Google form. I was speaking to James Howe earlier on this morning. He indicated to me that there was an issue with that Google account. For some reason, he was unable to log on to that. I am in the process of contacting the chairman of STARM to see if we can get that sorted out. Okay, so those details at the moment as will stand. If there's an issue, I will then contact again, try and get the information out through the members' notices. Okay. Thank you, President.
Thank you very much, Vice President, for that report. Does anybody have any questions? I can't see any. So can we go for approval? Thank you very much, delegates. Much appreciated. We are closely approaching the end of business. However, I've got a nice announcement for you all. Thank you all for your benevolence and digging really deeply into your pockets. After 2 years of being away, it was substantial sums that you put forward for the Benevolence Fund. You managed to raise £915 and €5. So thank you so much for that. Congratulations. Thank you for your generosity. And now I am going to ask Stuart Hunter, our Vice President, to rise to give the vote of thanks.
Each year, delegates, when we're attending Congress, I've heard Vice Presidents offering the vote of thanks. And to be honest with you, there's times, and I have to be honest about this, that a lot of the things just go over the top of my head. It's a list of names, and it's about recognising those people who have done the various things that have allowed Congress to take place. I can say that this year, as Vice President, being involved much more closely with the Secretariat, etc., and actually realised just how much work these people actually do to allow us to have the kind of Congress that we experience. So as I go through this list, it is a genuine recognition that these people played a vital role in actually ensuring that we have the Congress that we wanted to be able to enjoy. So first of all, we have to thank the manager and the staff here at Crieff Hydro, who have been incredibly courteous, supportive and helpful. Tapestry AV, guys up at the back. Staging, not just what we see here on the platform, but facilitating the online events in person. Again, even when people, non-technical people like myself, go and ask a really nerdy question, they're very tolerant with me. Again, what they've done, I think, has been really, really good. We are now in the 21st century with some of this stuff. So Tapestry AV, again, thank you. To all of our life members, we give you our vote of thanks to past presidents, our guests, both corporate and fraternal. I have to turn around and say that some of our fraternal guests last night certainly entertained us with their choir. I think that's one that we're not going to forget. Of course, our guest speaker, Professor Ken Muir. I don't think there's any of us who listened to what Ken had to say yesterday and not walk away thinking, do you know, that was actually really, really good what he actually had to say. It was clear, it was concise. And one of the things I personally would love to be able to thank Professor Ken Muir for, he repeatedly pointed out, and I was privileged to be in attendance at a number of those meetings where we represented the SSTA member view when he was doing his report. He consistently referred it back to what our members were saying and how relevant it was to us. So again, Professor Ken Muir receives our grateful thanks for his input. Members of the press, our exhibitioners, Thompson solicitors who sat patiently outside, the office bearers, the General Secretary, the Secretariat. This case, we'll name one or two of the Secretariat. We've got Ian Duncan, Fiona DL, Ian Glennie and Catherine Ross. These guys are often in the background. We tend to see their faces, etc., etc. But again, they are one of the most important cogs in the SSTA machine. So again, a brilliant thank you to you guys. Laura Young, I don't know how that woman finds the time. But Laura was the one who we have to thank for organising all of the Congress arrangements. I'm sure there must have been times she was pulling her hair out when she would receive emails about this and about that and the next time. But give her consummate professionalism, was constantly there supporting, which was brilliant. So thank you, Laura. The other office staff, Andrew Brown, again, an unsung hero, as is Claire Middlemass. It's always brilliant to see that the fact that these guys do what they do. And I'm going to contradict Andrew on something he said the other day when we spoke about this. Andrew turned around and said, it's just our job, it's what we get paid to do. Andrew, it's true, you do get paid to do it, but you go above and beyond, as do all of the office staff. And we thank you for that. One other person we wanted, a couple of other people we wanted to add into that was Janine Mcculloch, who happily helped out with some of the scrutineering that was taking place yesterday. And a new body at a very young age, basically a familial relative of Ian Duncan, his daughter Ruth, who actually helped out with Ukrainian refugee ribbons, etc., etc. So a thank you to Ruth for her participation. And hopefully she's got an early idea of what unionism was about, or the union is about. To all of the delegates, I have actually found this amazing to be able to meet people face to face. Not just to see you, but you know, to actually hear the comments, to listen to the debate. And I think there's been far, far more contributions that we've seen for a wee while. So to each and every one who's made a contribution, thank you. You make Congress what it should be. Finally, and our thanks to the companies who donated the prizes for the Benevolence Fund and the prize draw. Again, we couldn't do without that, so our thanks to that. But one person more than any other, our President, Catherine Nicol. I have sat beside this woman, I have been on with her in an executive, and I am in awe of her calmness. She may at times feel that she is a swan who's paddling frantically underneath the water, but she brings an assurance. And I definitely and most willingly offer a tribute of thanks for your chairing, your expertise, your calmness, your advice, your support. So, President, thank you. To all, I give the vote of thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President, for a very enjoy each other's company, cars if you need to, and then get back to the hotel. But on that happy note, I am going to shut Congress until next year.